adults, I asked the children what we learned from the story, but I wonder what we as adults learn from that story as well. It's easy when we know the end of the story, isn't it? But if we were genuinely put in that position where we were asked to share something when we only had that tiny amount, what would we do? It's a challenge, isn't it? Are we actually really willing to share? Are we really willing to do that? And this morning we're part of this whole series that we're in of talking about generosity. We've listened to a couple of the talks from Mark, whatever his name is. So I'm not going to try and bring my own teaching this morning, but I just was reminded, as I was listening again to the talks that he gave us, one of the things that struck me with what he said was that the whole thing about generosity is in 3 parts. He says it starts with the head, then it goes to the heart, and finally to the hands. And he said the head thing is actually, first of all, we need to come to an understanding that we have a good God who wants to give us good things. He's a giving God. He wants to bless us abundantly. A God that we can trust implicitly to provide for us. And just like a child implicitly trusts their own parents to provide for them, they don't have to worry about it. So we need to trust God implicitly that He will provide for us. And that's where it begins, because then we can change our whole attitude, can't we? It is not about how much can I get for me, but how can I use what I've got to be a blessing to other people? And I love the memory verse that we had this morning. God loves a cheerful giver. It's so simple and yet so profound, isn't it? So profound. It's not God loves somebody who gives a lot. It's somebody who has that cheerful attitude of wanting to give, of wanting to bless others. And that is what is important here, not the amount or what we do, but actually that whole attitude of not being begrudging, not giving and thinking, oh, well, I suppose as a Christian I ought to give some money to this or to that, but actually giving because we want to give. God loves a cheerful giver. And one of the other things that Mark said in his first talk was, think of someone you know who's really generous and think about what they do. And one of the people who came to my mind straight away was Lina. And when I heard that we were going to be doing the meeting together this morning, I said to Lina, oh, would you be willing to share your story with us? And thankfully she said yes. So I don't have to witter on this morning. I'm going to ask Lina to come and tell us a little bit about her story. So Lina. Okay, Lina. So I know that you are a business lady. So please, can you just start by telling us a little bit about your business and what you do?
Okay. So for over 20 years, I've run a training business for teachers, which I kind of stumbled on 20 years ago. I was working for the local authority and was doing some training for them about a particular area of exams for special needs kids. And I'd run a few of these courses through the local authority for other people and began to realise actually there's a huge need for this. So I went to my boss and said, perhaps we could run training, across the country. And of course, we're a local authority, so we couldn't possibly take the risk. So I came home and said to Andy, well, if they won't do it, why don't we do it? And basically, we set up a course in Kent. We hired a hall that would take 60. Thinking if we only get 30, we'll probably only get about 30, we'll spread the chairs out, it'll be okay. We ended up with 150, so I had to run a second course. And basically, with a few detours along the way, we've been doing that for the last sort of 20 or so years. So, that's what our business is. Now, mostly online, and we've got 200 members and 2,000 members, and we just do lots of training for teachers. So that's our business.
Okay. And through your business, you're able to give money away to charities. Can you tell us some of the projects that you're involved in, what's on your heart to do?
So I was a trustee for Links International, which is a small charity based on the South Coast, working mostly into Africa, India, and some of South America. And Andy, my husband, was a CEO for a few years. So we've been very involved with Links, and that's where the majority of the money that we've been able to give away through our business has gone. Setting up tiny businesses for people, for communities in Africa, feeding hungry children. We've been able to finance the building of a couple of churches, sort of mud churches, not nothing like we'd see in this country, but just helped local communities to buy a piece of land and actually build a very simple church there. So those are my favourite projects, actually working into poor communities in Africa. And we actually go out and run training and work in those communities as well.
Okay, so how did this all begin then? What were your aims and your vision when you first started?
Okay, well, I want to start answering that question by reading a prophecy that I had. So basically, a guy called Dwayne, who some of you will know, Dwayne White, came in 2006, and this was really before we'd started on this journey. And this is what he said to me. He said, basically, he felt he'd heard something from God that he wanted to say to me. He said, "I see you towards the end of your life rocking in a chair. And God the Father says, look back over your life and see the hungry children that you've fed, the churches you've planted, the homeless people that you've housed, the small businesses that you've started." And I took that not to mean that I would actually personally be building churches or necessarily helping homeless people or starting small businesses, but that the money that we were able to give would get behind those projects and also, in some ways actually practically be there. So that was back in 2006, and that felt like that's nice, we'll see. Anyway, quite quickly after I started training, I found that people were asking me the same questions about some particular tests. There's about 40 tests that you can use for these exam access arrangements that we train on. And people kept asking me the same questions again and again. I kept trying to answer them. And I had this idea of actually putting together a document which had a page about each of these 40 tests, where you can get it from, how much it cost, what it did and what it didn't do. And anyway, I produced that document. We put it on a floppy disk. Remember those? And my 15-year-old daughter would sit watching the telly, saving one disc after another. And we sold these for £5. At that time, we'd been supporting a project in Thailand for kids who had been orphaned by AIDS. And so I decided we'll sell these for £5 each, and we'll support the House of Grace, this home in Thailand. Anyway, these things sold like hotcakes. Amy couldn't keep up with saving them. I thought to start with we might sell 100, and then of course we'd be able to give £500 to the House of Grace. Anyway, these floppy disks sold like hotcakes, and I began to get other ideas for other materials that would basically just save the teachers we were training, save their time. So over the years, it's grown and grown and grown what we've been able to give. I always think back that actually Andy and I made a decision to give away £500. That's what we thought God was asking us to do. And of course, now we've given many multiples of that. And I'm actually quite glad that he only asked me to give £500. We made the decision then, anything on our resources and a couple of other projects that we did would all go to charity. It would have been harder if I'd known how much we were talking about. But I only had to decide to give 500 and then just to follow the principle that we felt that the Father had asked us to do.
Right, so if you were to start a business up again today, what would you take the same principle? Yes, I'm going to agree to give all this money to charity from this, or do you think, oh my goodness, I could have had all that money for myself?
Well, as I said, I'm just grateful to God that He said, give away that 500, because it was a lot of money. Then it was a lot of money to us. We weren't wealthy, but that was doable. Whereas if I'd known how much we've given now, that would have been I can't honestly say that I'd have managed it.
Right, right. And I know, Lina, you didn't want to talk about figures, but if people want to know how much that
I'm not going to say it now, but if you want to look at our website, we're Communicate Ed, so communicate-ed. Then the figures are on there.
The figures
I don't
are
want
on
to
there.
say them here.
And
but
I think you'll be impressed. So this is why I wanted Lina to talk about her business, because it started small. It started with her agreeing just to give away a certain amount. And of course, what's happened is God has refilled her flour and her oil over the years so that she's been able to give away an amazing amount. And this is what generosity is about. It's not, again, no, it's not about how much we give, but it's about being that cheerful giver, which is what Lina is, I believe. So, Lina, if you were to give us some idea of what you think the purpose of giving is, perhaps you could, and I think Tim has got some slides for you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll get those up in a minute. So I'll just go back to that bit that Matt read so beautifully earlier on, just the second part of those verses from Luke chapter 6. And this is from the Message translation. Give away your life, you'll find life given back, but not merely given back, bonus and blessing. Giving, not getting is the way. Generosity begets generosity. And I feel like I've stumbled on this principle, really, and I think we can understand it, that those verses aren't just talking about giving financially, they're talking about giving of ourselves and being generous and kind. And I think we perhaps can see it working with friendship. If I'm friendly, I'll have friends. So my friendship multiplies. And rather weirdly, I think the same happens with money. That as we give away, if we're generous, actually that money multiplies to us. Not that we've ever given away in order to get back. It's just kind of stumbled on this rather weird principle that's what happens. So let's have a look at these slides. This is a guy, Chris Hone, who is basically one of the richest men in the world. He comes up in the Sunday Times rich list, but he's also probably the biggest giver in this country. So he's, the Sunday Times called him in 2023 Britain's most charitable person. And can we have the next slide, Tim? He's quite private. He doesn't make a big shout about himself. And what he says, as far as we know, I've done a bit of researching into him, as far as we know, this guy's not a believer, he's not a Christian, he's got no religious background, but he says, what I found was that the more money I gave away, the more money came back to me. If I hadn't wanted to give the money away, it wouldn't have come through me. So I do think that's the secret. It sounds funny, but I don't say it lightly. So this guy, as far as we know, an unbeliever, presumably doesn't know anything about the Bible. He's stumbled on this principle that being generous, rather weirdly, brings stuff back to us. Was there another slide, Tim? I can't remember now. Or was that it? Yeah, so this is that Luke 38 verse in a different translation. Give and you'll receive. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together, and made room for more. I love that. That what you're giving away, it's pushed down, shaken together to make some more room, and then more is poured in, running over and poured into your lap. The amount you give will determine the amount that you get back. And just to reiterate, really, it's not just about money. It's about giving ourselves away, being generous in everything. And it just kind of opens a door, really, for God to bless us.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lina. I'm not going to add to that. Maybe we could finish with a little bit of worship. Yep. I think it speaks for itself.